My name is Jamie Niehoff, and I'm one of the engineering librarians working at the Art, Architecture, and Engineering Library in the Duderstadt Center on North Campus. And I would like to introduce your presenter for today, Joanna Thielen. She will be talking about how to conduct an effective literature review. Take it away, Joanna.
Thanks, Jamie. Let's get started. We got a lot of content, like Jamie mentioned. Throughout the presentation today, Jamie will be putting some links into the chat, so feel free to follow those. Also know that this is being recorded, and after the session, everybody who registered will receive a copy of the slides as well as a copy of the recording for future reference. Okay, so some Zoom housekeeping before we get started. Please feel free to use the chat for questions or comments throughout. We want to make sure to answer your questions. We are librarians here presenting, and I promise you that there are no stupid, silly, or too basic questions about the Library. Librarians are really friendly people, and we are here to help you succeed in whatever stage of your academic career you're at. So please ask questions. I guarantee that somebody else in the audience has the exact same question as you. Please keep your mics muted throughout the presentation, but there will be a Q&A portion at the end. Feel free to unmute during that portion if you prefer to ask your questions that way. Closed captions are available, and this is being recorded and shared, and will be shared, as I've already mentioned. So here's an outline of what we're going to be talking about today. So I'm going to give you a brief overview of some of the highlights of Library, including some things you may not know about. Then we're going to dive into the content related to literature reviews. So determining what type of literature review you need to do, which is really important when you're thinking about your approach and the scope of your literature review. Talking about strategies for effectively searching scholarly databases for literature. That is really important because you can waste a lot of time and energy by not searching them very effectively. And then we'll have a brief discussion on how to use a citation manager or citation management software to manage your literature and keep it all organized, which can be a big hurdle. And then finally, some key takeaways and additional resources for you. So let's start with the overview of a Library. These are a few selected services and resources. It's not comprehensive by any means. And everything we're showing you here today is free for you to use as a student, faculty member, or staff member. So first, I just want to highlight that this workshop is being hosted by the librarians who serve the College of Engineering. So that's Lena, Paul, Jamie, and myself. We're all on the call today. And we work with different departments within the College of Engineering. So don't worry if you're not in the College of Engineering and this slide just looks like acronym soup. This is just to give those in the College of Engineering an idea of who the librarian is for their specific department. And if you're not sure who the librarian is for your COE department, you can always just email enginelibrarians@umich.edu and one of us will respond to you. And for those of you not in the College of Engineering, there is a librarian assigned to work with every school and department at and Jamie will put a link into the chat of how you can find your librarian here. And I see a question in the chat, will the slides be shared? Yes, all of the slides and a recording of the presentation will be shared with everybody who registered for this workshop in a few days. So yes, thank you for that question. Great, Jamie put the link into the chat to find your librarian for your department. And I promise they will be just as friendly as helpful as the engineering librarians. One resource that's a great starting point for doing your research is the Library research guides. So librarians such as myself put together these guides on specific disciplines, specific topics, or even for specific courses. We kind of create these research guides as a curated list of library resources for a specific discipline, topic, or course. So they're kind of like a great starting place for your research. So for example, this is the research guide I've made for the mechanical engineering department. And you can see the Getting Started tab has information on what they'll find on this guide, as well as these tabs over here on the left with information on how do you find articles and conference proceedings. So that tab has links to scholarly databases that I recommend for mechanical engineering. And there's a research guide for your topic or department, I guarantee it. Another valuable service for you is you can actually schedule an appointment with your librarian. So that's the link up here, and Jamie will put that into the chat. So basically you just select kind of the general area that you're working in. So I'm working in social sciences, or I'm working in engineering or health sciences. And then over on the left, you select more specifically the department or area that you're working in. This little calendar will pop up and you just select a day and time that works for your schedule, and then click continue. You'll be asked to fill out a really brief web form, and then your appointment will be scheduled. We're still doing these virtually during the fall, but some librarians are available to meet in person depending on their work schedule. But this is a great way for you to get tailored and individualized help on your research topic. And I promise you, by meeting with a librarian, you'll save a lot of time and energy in the long run. And we don't limit the number of appointments or even emails that we answer. So if you have questions or problems, please reach out to your librarian. Another service that might be really useful, especially to those of you who are graduate students, is the library has help on dissertation formatting to get your dissertation into the format that Rackham requires. So we have this guide for using Microsoft Word right here. There's a link here, and Jamie put that in the chat, thank you. But more importantly, you can also make an appointment with a library expert who will sit down with you. The button is right here. They'll sit down with you during this appointment and actually get you some hands-on help and making sure your actual Word document is formatted correctly. So doing it virtually, you'll do screen sharing and they'll tell you where to click and how to kind of format your Word document so that you can focus on getting the content of your dissertation in there rather than getting it in the right Word formatting that Rackham requires. So this will be a really beneficial service to those of you who are working towards a dissertation. And then also we have a service called Interlibrary Loan. And this service is for if you are looking for something that the UM library doesn't have, whether it's something in print, like a book, or if it's something online, like an online journal article. So we have this free online service called Interlibrary Loan, or sometimes it's called document delivery. And this is how you can access those materials. So to request access to those materials, what you would do is go to the library homepage, click Explore in the upper right corner, and then click on this Interlibrary Loan button right here. And then you'll be able to request the materials that you're looking for. So with the Interlibrary Loan portion, we request the materials from a different academic library. For example, we might contact MSU or Purdue and ask them for a copy of the print book or a copy of the online article. And once it's available, you'll get an email saying how you can access that material. If it's print, you'll have to come into one of the libraries to pick it up. But if it's online, you'll just get a link to access it. So if you're looking for online materials, you don't even have to come in the library to access all of those. And another interesting thing about Interlibrary Loan is actually through this service, you can request small portions of UM print books be scanned and sent to you digitally. So you can request to have a chapter or two of a print book scanned and they will send it to you as a PDF. And then finally, we have this proxy server bookmarklet. So this is great for when you're working off campus. And sometimes when you've done your searching, you may have hit paywalls where you want to get access to a material like a book chapter or an article. And you actually hit the paywall that says, please pay $35 to access this article. So with this bookmarklet, it will get around those paywalls for you. So in this site here, basically you just take this click for library access link. You would just click on that, drag it up into the bookmarks bar of your chosen web browser. And then if you're doing searching and you hit a paywall, you can just click on that bookmark and it will redirect you through the UM library's servers. You'll be asked to sign in with your unique name and password, do the duo verification, and then it will get around that paywall if we have online access to it. So that's especially helpful if you're working off campus. If you're working on campus, you won't need it as much. Okay, so that's it for overview of UM Library. If there's any questions, feel free to put it in chat right now. We're happy to answer questions. I'm going to pause for a few seconds before we go on to our content related to lit reviews.
I don't see any questions at this time, Joanna.
Okay, great. I'm going to continue on. So for first part related to lit reviews, so how do you know what type of literature review you need to do? That's really important because it helps you to kind of scope your work. So why are literature reviews important? There's a variety of reasons. I'm not going to read all these reasons off the screen to you verbatim, but basically it kind of summarizes your research topic, and it's meant to convince the reader of the so what question. So what? Why is your topic important? Why should I care? Why should I, as the reader, continue reading? Why is this worth my time to be looking at? It talks, you'll want to analyze things like major themes. What are the developments in the field? What are current gaps and limitations? Where are there points of disagreement? Because not all research is going to agree with each other, as well as what are areas of future exploration or challenges within the field. So conducting a literature review is, you can kind of think of it in this 6-step process right here. So obviously this is a very simplified process. Not everything fits into this nice, tidy, similar process, but it's a good way to visualize the process. So first thing you need to do is generate keywords. What keywords do you need, would you use to describe your research topic? Then you'll locate the literature, evaluate and organize the literature, then synthesize it into that coherent narrative, and finally write the literature review. This is going to be an iterative process. Sometimes the cycle might actually go backwards. There's going to be feedback loops. It's not a one and done type thing. Just keep that in mind. This process right here is definitely very simplified. So in terms of the type of literature review you're going to do, it's important to kind of think of it along these X and Y axes. Literature reviews can be selective, or they can run the spectrum to more comprehensive. They can also be a part of a larger work or a standalone work itself. So I'll give you examples of types of lit reviews that will fall into each of these quadrants. So a selective lit review that's part of a larger work, an example is an intro to a journal article. One that's part of a larger work but is more comprehensive would be the lit review portion of a thesis or dissertation. Standalone works that are selective would be a course assignment, such as a term paper. And then finally, a standalone work that's more comprehensive would be something like a review article that would be published in a scholarly journal. So it's important to understand which type of lit review you're doing, because that will really affect the scope and how much time and effort you're able to put into that lit review. So there's various types of lit reviews. Literature review is really thrown around as kind of a generic term, but there's lots and lots of different types. This Grant and Booth article from 2009 found 14 different types of reviews that are commonly published in the literature. That's a lot of different types of reviews. They do note that there is significant overlap between these types of reviews, and we're obviously not going to have time to discuss all of them. But I'm going to highlight a few, especially because these types of reviews are becoming more and more popular. You may have heard of them as buzzwords within your disciplines or your field. So it's important to know what these types of reviews actually mean before you embark on doing one. So let's start with the basic. What is a literature review? Like I said, lit review is often a really generic term that's thrown around to mean any type of review. But a more precise definition that comes from the Grant and Booth article is that it's published materials that examine current or recent literature, covers a wide variety of subjects at various levels of completeness and comprehensiveness, and may include research findings. The lit review will also identify gaps, explain the importance of a topic, hypothesizes future works, as well as other things. And literature reviews are usually written as part of a larger work, such as a journal article or a thesis or dissertation. So this is an example of a literature review that was published as a scholarly article. Like I said before, I'm the librarian for the mechanical engineering department in the College of Engineering. So some of my examples are a little bit focused in that area, but I promise that they'll be general enough that anybody from even education or psychology or health sciences will be able to grasp the examples. So here's an example of a literature review that was published. And in this slide and some of the subsequent slides, I've tried to highlight in the abstract the sentences that kind of tell you what sort of review it is. Sometimes, like this article, for example, they come out really blatantly in the title and say, this is a literature review, this is a systematic review. But sometimes you kind of have to do some digging into the abstract or even the methodology section to see what type of review it actually is. Next is a scoping review. So this is a more comprehensive type of review. It basically provides a preliminary assessment of the size and scope of available research literature on a topic, including ongoing research. So the big caveat with scoping reviews is that they do not assess the quality of the literature, they are assessing quantity of the literature. And presence of literature or quantity of literature on topic doesn't necessarily mean quality. So that is a big caveat. So here's an example of a scoping review that was done related to propelling aids for manual wheelchairs. The next type of review is systematic review. Many of you may have heard of this term. It's becoming very, very popular in many disciplines. We've heard a lot about it in engineering recently. These types of reviews are very common in health sciences. And the goal of this type of review is to gather all relevant literature on a topic, do it through a transparent protocol, and then appraise its quality and synthesize it. So these systematic reviews, to truly be a systematic review, they must follow a very strict and transparent protocol. For that reason, they are typically performed by research teams. It's a big undertaking for one person to do a systematic review themselves. And also they do take a long time. They usually take 12 to 18 months to complete. They're really their own research project themselves to publish a systematic review. I'm not telling you that to scare you away from doing a systematic review, but just to tell you what really the guidelines are if you want to embark on your systematic review. Many researchers actually include a librarian on their systematic review research team because we have the expert searching knowledge and the skills to help you do that first step, which is to gather all relevant literature on your topic. So if you're interested in doing a systematic review, I'd highly suggest reaching out to the librarian for your school or department and see if they would be willing to collaborate with you on the research team, or even just set up some appointments to kind of guide you and provide resources on how to do it. There's even specific software that has been developed to help researchers do this process transparently, pardon me, and to follow that strict protocol. So it is a very structured type of review. And here's an example of a systematic review. And the portion that I've highlighted in the abstract here really highlights that it in fact is a systematic review. They're stating their research questions. They are stating which protocol they are following. They appraised all of the literature that they gathered and synthesized all the included literature. Oh, and they also make it very clear that not all of the literature they gathered was actually included in the systematic review later on. And then finally, a meta-analysis. This takes systematic reviews one step further. So after doing the systematic review methodology, a meta-analysis then statistically combines the results of quantitative studies, rather, to provide more precise statistics on this. So all of the things that apply to systematic reviews also apply to meta-analysis, like things about a strict protocol, working in a research team, etc. But this time they go even further by doing some statistical analyses. So again, here's an example of a meta-analysis where they did that additional step of a statistical analysis. And the portion I've highlighted in the abstract is how you can tell that they did a meta-analysis. And one thing I want to highlight is on some of these screenshots, you may have actually noted that there's this keyword section. It often appears near the title or the abstract of the article. And remember that the first step in the Creswell's 6-step lit review process was to generate keywords. So when you're looking at articles, you want to see if they have keywords on them, because that's kind of helping you with that first step of generating keywords. Write those down somewhere. So for example, if I was doing research related to fitness trackers, like this meta-analysis on, I would write down all of those keywords and see if I'm using keywords similar to that, or maybe I need to add some more keywords. And we'll talk about keywords more in a little bit. I see there's a question in the chat. How large a topic is suitable for a systematic review? It will be scary to think about collecting all relevant literature if the scope is relatively large. Yes, that's an excellent question. You really need to work with your research team to scale down, to scope your systematic review into something feasible. And that's where developing your inclusion and exclusion criteria before you embark on your systematic review, before you start gathering the literature, is going to be incredibly important. So for example, in health sciences, you need to think of something like the demographics of the population used in the study. Is it okay if the study has males and females, or are you just looking at males? Are you looking at a specific age group? Are you looking at humans with or without a specific condition or taking a specific medication? Those sorts of things. And systematic reviews don't necessarily have to include a ton of literature that's published. I've seen systematic reviews where they only are analyzing 6 or 8 articles because they've made their inclusion criteria so narrow, which actually might be a little bit more helpful. But you don't want to do a systematic review on things like, the treatment of breast cancer. That is way, way too large. You might want to scope it down to the treatment of breast cancer in males who are over the age of 50, for example. That's just an example that popped off the top of my head. But thank you for that question, and let me know if that didn't answer your question. Okay, I'm going to keep going. Okay, so you're probably thinking, what's a review article? That's another generic term that's thrown out quite often. I've already said it in this presentation. A review article can really be any of the types of reviews we discussed, or really any of those 14 types of reviews that Grant and Booth identified in their article. It really depends on the journal's guidelines and focus. You can look for clues in the title, abstract, and methodology section to see what type of review it is. And review articles are a really great place to start when you're doing research. They summarize a ton of information on a specific topic, and they usually have a really rich references section. So you can use that references section to find additional sources. The one caveat with review articles is that they summarize the literature at a specific point in time. So for example, a review article that was published last year in 2020 will have more of the recent research than a review article that was published in 2010 on the same topic. So that's just something to keep in mind with review articles. I'm not saying don't use a review article from 2010, but just be aware that if you do use that article, you will need to make a cognizant effort to find research that has been published more recently on your topic. Yes, and there's a response to the question about systematic review scoping in the chat. So it sounds like choosing the scope is also a part of the research that we should think about very carefully, and we can iterate on the scope during the review research. Exactly, yes, choosing your scope is going to be very, very important, and actually searching through the literature itself will help you to determine your scope. Obviously, you don't want to do a systematic review that has been already published. you'll need to find a scope that is unique and novel in some way. Okay, so what else should I think about before starting my literature review? So where do I start? This is a common question we get as librarians. I mean, when you're in academia, you know you're going to have to write a literature review at some point, but it's really overwhelming. It's like, where do I even start? It seems like everybody else knows what they're doing except me. Well, that is not the truth, I promise you. So the first thing I would suggest is use the resources, especially the people around you, and ask questions. Say, I don't know, I need help. That's actually a sign of strength rather than a sign of weakness. So if you're just joining a lab or you're just starting off a new collaboration, I'd suggest looking at the recent articles, dissertations, conference presentations, conference papers, any sort of publication that has come out of your lab group or your collaborators lab or research in that area, and just starting to familiarize yourself. Find review articles on your research topic. And when I go into the live demo portion, I'll show you that in many scholarly databases, you can use the filters on the left side to narrow down to look at review articles only. Talk with the people around you. So your lab mates, people in your research group, mentors, PIs, if you're in a journal club, etc., to talk about what are the key articles in your field. Who are the key authors doing research? What are the key journals you should be looking for? In addition to searching scholarly databases by keyword, you can also search them by author names. You can also search by journal names to just browse the most recent articles that were published in those journals. And I'll show you how to do that as well. Other things to look at, Wikipedia. You might be surprised to hear me say that, but Wikipedia often has some really great information, and it's written at more of a level for the general public. Of course, you need to check everything for credibility that you find on Wikipedia or any other sort of non-scholarly online source, but it can be a good way to get kind of a general baseline knowledge before you go into that really complex articles with like scientific terminology. And also the references section in Wikipedia often has links to really great scholarly peer-reviewed research. So you can use that as a way of finding sources. I'm not saying cite Wikipedia or use Wikipedia only, but it can be a good starting point. I'm a librarian and I still use Wikipedia occasionally if I need to look up things quickly. And of course, like I mentioned before, many articles list keywords on the first page of the article. Keep track of them, because remember, Creswell's first step in the lit review process is generating keywords. So another big question about lit reviews is, how do I know when I've found enough? And really, only you can answer this question, because you really are the expert on your topic, your specific research niche, as well as the specific needs related to your literature review. So here, I think I give you like 6 or 7 things to consider to determine when you have enough. So the first is to realize that doing a literature review or doing any sort of searching for literature is really an art, not a science. There's not a strict protocol that you can follow to say, once I've done X, Y, Z, I'm done. So the more you search, the more you read, the more you write on your topic, the more you will kind of hone your sixth sense for the literature review, which will help you to determine when you found enough. The second one, new literature review is literally being published every day. The scholarly databases I'll show you have new articles that are added every single day. So know that you have to stop at some point. You can't keep searching forever. You know, your dissertation is going to have a deadline. You have to submit your class assignment on a specific due date. The third one is to avoid selection bias. So basically I mean, searching once is not enough for information. Like I mentioned with that Creswell cycle for the literature review, that's very simplified. You'll have to go through the cycle multiple times, sometimes go backwards in the cycle. There'll be feedback loops, things like that. So example of ways you can introduce bias into your lit review process is only searching one scholarly database. There is overlap in some of the databases, but all of them will have unique content. Another source of bias is not searching on multiple days, because see number 2 on this slide, because new literature is being published every day. Other things to consider: define what your goals are before starting to search the literature. So this is why I did the section beforehand, talking about different types of reviews and thinking about selective to comprehensive. Because if you're writing a systematic review, you need to be much more comprehensive than if you're writing the lit review section of a journal article. And that can help you scope and answer this question of, when do I have enough? The next one is thinking about the volume of research in your area. A larger volume will need more searching, more sifting through your results, and ultimately more reading. If you're doing research related to type 2 diabetes, there's obviously going to be a large amount of research, because that's been a well-documented research topic over many decades. If you're doing research on multiple myeloma, which is a rare form of cancer, that's going to be a much smaller scope and a much smaller amount of literature. And actually, you might even struggle to find literature on that topic, just because there is so little or it's not available online. So there's different problems with either of those. And 2 last things to consider: what are resources available? What resources are available to you? So first of all, how much time do you have to complete this? You have much more time if you're doing a systematic review article as opposed to a term paper for a course. So collaborators, is anybody helping you with this? Again, systematic review, you'll probably have a research team, as opposed to a class assignment that's probably just you or maybe a small group. And then finally, think about creating a search log about how you document your searches and the process of going through this lit review. So just like you keep some sort of lab notebook or research notebook or notes on your research, do this for how you're searching. You'll thank yourself in 6 months, I promise you. So create a Google Doc, a Word doc, a section of your electronic or print lab notebook. It can be a separate paper notebook if you prefer it that way. But that is a way you can document what you have done, so that you don't duplicate effort later on. And then also you just have a record of it. And another thing I'll show you how to do is, in the scholarly databases, many of them allow you to create a free personal account. And once you do that, you have access to more advanced features, such as saving searches and setting up email alerts. So by setting up email alerts when there's a new document that's added to the database that meets your search criteria, you will get an email about it and you can go look at it. So you don't have to do the searching. The database is actually doing that for you. So a little bit more about the search log. I think that might be a new concept for many of you. So what should I include in it? Date is always going to be really important. Think about, where did you search? Which database, which catalog, which print materials were you looking for or looking through? What was successful and unsuccessful in terms of your keywords, that choices, your search combinations? Were you searching just on specific author names? Were you browsing through the recent issues of a specific journal? What sort of advanced features did you use in the database, such as the filters or setting up saved searches? Again, I'll be demonstrating these in just a moment. And then finally, take notes to yourself about what sort of searches or leads you want to pursue next. Where do you think you need to go next? Maybe you think you found enough and you're ready to start reading. Maybe you need to go back and do some more keyword searching. So that will be really helpful, so you don't have to store everything up in your brain. Okay, so now we're going to talk about, how do you actually search scholarly databases effectively for literature? There are some strategies you can use to help you pan for gold a little bit more efficiently. So if you don't mind answering in the chat right now, which scholarly databases have you searched in the past and why? I'll give you about 2 minutes to do that. And if you haven't searched any scholarly databases, that's perfectly fine. We're happy to have you here, and we're introducing you to some today. Okay, so I'm seeing Google Scholar and PubMed, Web of Science, Google Scholar, PubMed, Scopus, Yep, Library. Okay, so it looks like Google Scholar is a pretty common one amongst attendees today. Scopus as well, great. Scopus is the database I am going to be demonstrating today because I think it will have literature that's relevant to anyone who's here. It really covers, it's an interdisciplinary database that covers all disciplines. Scopus Web of Science, great. Well, thank you all for doing that. I really appreciate that. I'm gonna continue on. Yep, Science Direct as well. Great. Okay, so through the UI library, we have approximately 1,000 scholarly databases, which is great, but also at the same time, you're probably thinking, how do I know which one to pick? I don't have time to search 1,000 databases. Understood. And we don't want, as librarians, we don't want you to search all of those because some of them are definitely not relevant to your research. So this is where your discipline's research guide is really going to be your best friend. This is a great starting place to learn which databases does your librarian recommend you start with. So the screenshot here is of the research guide for the psychology department, and it was put together by Haley Mooney, who's the librarian for the psychology department. You can see her info is down here. And you'll see I'm looking for scholarly journal articles. So she's got a whole tab here that's going to list several databases that she suggests starting to search for journal articles. So again, Jamie put the link into the chat of how you can find the research guide on your topic or your discipline. So you'll also need to regularly search multiple databases. I think I talked about this a little bit already, but to go into a little bit more detail, while there is overlap between some scholarly databases, each of them will contain unique documents. So if you only searched one, you're going to be missing relevant documents. And then also all of these databases have different search algorithms, which means that they, the order of the search results will differ a little bit. So especially if you're doing a really broad search and you get search results, you probably don't have the time or the bandwidth to search through all of them. So maybe you search through the first 100 or so. So that's when the order of the search results could be really important to you. Okay, so now I'm going to go into some concrete strategies of how you can search, specifically how you can search by keywords efficiently. So remember, you're going to get a copy of these slides, so you don't need to memorize these right now. You don't need to worry about writing them down, and I'll be demonstrating them in a little bit. So I'm going to pretend that our topic today is we're writing a literature review for a journal article because I've developed a new computer vision method for detecting failures in 3D printing. So the first thing you want to do is break your topic down into the important concepts. You don't want to put a full sentence or a full question into the scholarly database. You want to put the most important concepts. And then you want to brainstorm keywords that reflect those concepts and synonyms for those keywords. And that's what I've done in this table here. So one of my concepts is 3D printing, but another common term for 3D printing is additive manufacturing. And then I also have other variations of 3D printing. So 3-dimensional printing, both with and without a hyphen. So try and think of all of those synonyms or different ways words could be, keywords could be written out. Sometimes if an acronym is commonly used, you would want to search on the acronym as well as the full phrase. And this is where looking at the keywords on those articles can be really, really helpful to help you generate keywords and synonyms also. So I did that for my 3 concepts, so 3D printing, failure, and computer vision. This is really important because different authors, even though they're working on the same topic, are going to be using different words or phrases to describe their research. So if I only went with 3D printing, failure, and computer vision, I would be missing some relevant sources to me because I wasn't thinking broadly about what other terms are researchers in my area using. So once you get your keywords and synonyms, you can think about how do you want to combine those when you're searching in the scholarly database. Many of you have probably heard of Boolean operators. So we have and, or, not. The easiest way to think of those is Venn diagrams, which are here. So this will help you to think about how do I want to combine those keywords. You can also use phrase searching by putting phrases in quotation marks, which tells the database to search for that exact phrase. So computer vision would be a phrase for quotation marks. The word failure doesn't need quotation marks because it's not a phrase. Other things you can do, like you can add truncation, which means you add an asterisk at the end of your root word to tell the database to search for all forms of that word. So if I put in FAIL asterisk, fail asterisk, I'm telling the database to search for all variations of that word. So fail, fails, failure, failures, failing, etc. You get the idea. And you can use parentheses to combine these different search strategies. So you can see at the bottom, I put together my 3 different concepts in a pretty advanced search strategy. So I'm using fail with the truncation, the and Boolean operator, computer vision as a phrase with the quotation marks, the and Boolean operator, and then within the parentheses are my synonyms for the concept of 3D printing. So 3D printing or 3-dimensional printing or additive manufacturing. So that's how you can get fancy and kind of combine those together. Again, you don't need to memorize these. There's not going to be a quiz at the end. You will get a copy of the slides. And another powerful feature in many scholarly databases is they have something that's called a controlled vocabulary. So this is a standardized language of topics that the database has come up with. And
hey, Joanna,
this is, yep.
We've got a question in the chat.
Thank you.
How often do you use not? Yep.
In the lit reviews, do you think the possibility of losing potential matches to your subjects is okay? Like if an applicable article just happened to randomly use your not keyword as opposed to being the key subject in the article. Yes, that does make sense. So that is, let me go back to, here we go. So the not Boolean operator is meant to exclude specific concepts or topics. So for example, if you're researching the socialization habits of chimpanzees, you might want to do socialization habits and chimpanzees, not orangutans, because you're not interested in that species of animals. And I would generally people use the not Boolean operator when they're getting a lot of search results that are somewhat relevant, but have a lot of stuff that's not relevant to them. So in that primate socialization example, the researcher was just getting a lot of information that was talking about the socialization habits of orangutans, but they were focusing on chimpanzees. So they used the not to try to exclude that information about orangutans. The big caveat with using the not Boolean operator is, like the commentator said in the chat, you will lose search results that are relevant to you. So when you're using the not operator, I would suggest doing the search both with and without the not operator and kind of carefully evaluating, am I losing a lot of sources that are relevant to me? So just be kind of careful with that one because you can use lose relevant sources by excluding them, which is kind of exactly what our commentator said in the chat. But yes, excellent question. And these are the exact type of questions that your librarian is equipped to handle, and they're happy to discuss with you in an appointment or via email.
Joanna, the not, I think he's also asking is like not as a term. So that may be, in most cases, and not are in caps, and so distinguishes between a word and a not. And yes, just wanted to point that out.
Yes, thank you, Lena, for also adding that. When you do type in your Boolean operators in the databases, they do need to be capitalized, like they're shown here on the screen. If you do not capitalize it, the database won't recognize it as your Boolean operator. And I'll show that in just a moment. Okay, so back to our controlled vocabulary. So the controlled vocabulary is the way that the database tries to get around the problems of authors using different terms or an uncontrolled vocabulary. So articles that are on the same topic will have the same controlled vocabulary regardless of the terms that the authors are actually using in their article. So controlled vocabulary words are really excellent keywords to use. So for an example, the screenshot on the right shows controlled vocabulary in the Scopus database. So they have this engineering controlled terms area. So I can actually see that 3D printers is a controlled term. So that's maybe something I want to search on instead of the term 3D printing, for example. And there's also other controlled vocabularies like mesh, pardon me, is medical subject headings. Those are controlled vocabulary for terms related to health sciences. So this is a screenshot of the PubMed database, which is a medical database. And also I just wanted to highlight that these are screenshots from different databases that show the different ways that you can create a free personal account in the database, and then you can save searches and set up email alerts to kind of automate this process for yourself a little bit. And I'll again show you how to do this. And then finally, citation mapping is something you can do in these databases. So once you have a good article to begin with, the databases help you move forward and backwards in time. So how they do that is you can move backwards in time by looking at the references section. So in this case, it's listed on the left of Compendex refs, meaning references. And then you can also look at the citing documents or the cited by documents. And that's how you can kind of move forward in time on that topic. And in this case, this article has been cited by 29 other articles. And then I could click on that to get access to the list of those 29 articles. So it's helping you find other sources related to your topic. Okay, so now I'm going to go into a live demo of Scopus. Actually, I'll go to the library's website. Sorry, I didn't pull this up beforehand. Okay, since we're getting kind of close to the hour, I'm going to skip over some of the more basic things and go to some of the more advanced features. So the first thing I'm going to do is I will actually sign in. I already have a personal account in this database. Okay, so now you'll see it has my initials up here, JT. So I'm going to do a search. So let's see, like, I know 3D printers, and then I can either type in the Boolean like this, or you can actually do add another search field down here, and your Booleans actually pop up and you don't have to type them in. So in this case, I will do 3D print, and then I'll do fail with that asterisk to find all sorts of the forms of that word. Okay, so I've got over 2,000 search results. So that's kind of a lot sometimes. So you can use the filters on the left-hand side to narrow things down. So if you're looking for things by a specific author, you can see who's the most prevalent author in this area. You can also look at maybe different subject areas. Oops, I don't know why that's not opening up for me. Years, publication years, you can see if you want to narrow things down to just the last 5 years or just the last 10 years. You do have to check all of these boxes individually in Scopus, which is kind of annoying. One I really like is the document type filter here. And this is where, like I mentioned before, you can just filter down to review articles if you're looking for reviews. So in this case, you just click it and then limit to. So now I'm looking at the 55 documents that have the phrase 3D printers, have some form of fail in it, and are review articles. So keep track of those filters that you're using in your search log, because that will be really helpful. So again, you're not duplicating effort. In the search results here, you can see just an overview of the articles, including how many times it's been cited. Which, so this one's been cited 73 times, so maybe that's a really important article in the field. You can click on the title to get more information about it. Actually, let me go back. Here's one of the places where you can save things. So you can actually save this search to, I will save it to my personal account. So I'll click save. I'll do like 3D printer failure review articles. Give it some sort of name that makes sense to yourself. And then I'll click save. And yep, it tells me it's been saved. And now if I go up to this JT and then saved searches, these are all of the different searches that I have saved at different points. So here's the one we just saved. Tells me I have 55 documents. When did I last run it? So if I wanted to go in and run that search again, I can just click that little the little circle arrow here. You can also get rid of it. You can edit the search, and this little icon right here is how you set up alerts, email alerts for yourself. So give it a name, where you want it to be sent, and how frequently. So if there's another document published in this database that meets your search criteria, you'll automatically get an email. So you don't have to search for it. So that can be a really effective way of automating your searching for the literature review. And then of course you can make it active or inactive at any point. If you're not interested in that anymore, you can just turn it to inactive. So that's one way you can save your searches. I will go back to my search. I'll just click on this one to give you an example. So I'm going to scroll down underneath the abstract, and we'll see here's the author keywords. That's the uncontrolled vocabulary, and this index keywords. Oh, it doesn't say controlled vocabulary. So there wasn't any added to this, or this tree is controlled vocabulary. But you can use this for brainstorming additional keywords or synonyms for your existing keywords. And then if I go down here, here's the references section. So those are the ones that were published before this article. And then if I go up here, we've got the cited by. This one's been cited by 2 other articles. So those are published more recently. And then to get to the full article, use the Get It or the View at Publisher button to get access to the PDF. You can also create personalized lists. That's what this Save to List button is right here. So you can save the list if there's, maybe you're making a reading list of articles you want to look back at later, or reviews that you want to look at. So you can create lists there as well, in addition to saving those searches. Other ways you can search, I'll go back to our main search page, reset. By default, you'll be searching title, abstract, and keywords, but you can also search on all of these different ways. So you can search by author name, for example. So let's see, so it's usually last name, comma first initial. So I'll search, I know this is a professor in the ME department. So this brings up all of the documents in that area, or that have this specific author's name. So I can see what he has published. These are clickable links to see, oh, what is this person? Oh, so mechanical engineering, and I can save this to a list as well. So you can get an overview of that, what sort of documents have they published recently? So you can look at all of those documents. And also, like I mentioned, go back to search. You can also do it by source title. That's the name of the publication. So for example, I know there's a journal called Additive Manufacturing. This will just bring up all of the documents that were published in that specific journal. So you can see all of them have the same source title here. If you just wanted to browse the most recent articles on that from that specific journal as well. And again, you can save searches, set up alerts, all of that sort of stuff as well.
Hi, Joanna. This is Jamie. You've got a 5 minute warning for the end of the meeting.
Thank you. Okay, so apologies for kind of rushing through that live demo, but I'm going to go back to presentation here. Just a few minutes on citation managers. I'm sorry, I'm going to have to skip that. So why would you use the citation manager? It basically is a software that helps you to organize your literature once you find it and are ready to read it and organize and synthesize it. And that could be a whole nother workshop topic. So there's several that you may have heard of: Mendeley, EndNote, or Zotero. And the library also has research guides on all 3 of those software, including this research guide that's linked here that will help you to decide which one best meets your needs. And And then we have individual research guides for one on Zotero, one on Mendeley, and one on EndNote as well, that will help you everything from getting your account set up to using the more advanced features. And there's also contact info down here of an email address, as well as in a link where you can schedule an appointment with a library expert to get that one-on-one assistance on using this software. So if you don't use one already, I'd highly suggest starting to use one to organize your literature. And then key takeaways. I actually think I'm going to skip these since you're getting a copy of the slides. And I just wanted to promote we have 3 other fall workshops coming up. One on finding funding, one on how to write and implement a data management plan, and one from a publisher, IEEE, which is an engineering publisher, to kind of give a behind the scenes view of the publishing process so that you can be more successful. And I'll just end with this slide that reiterates my contact information. Feel free to contact me at any time with questions related to this topic, or I will help you find your librarian for your subject area as well. So thank you all for taking time to come to our virtual workshop. We'll be sending the materials along later this week, and good luck with your literature reviews.